So with that in mind, because you're a numbers person, clearly spreadsheets, things of that sort. How are you using that data or other data to hold your organization accountable? Accountability is such a big problem. Heck, I run a team that has 20 people, and we occasionally have accountability issues. I mean, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. How do you go about that to make sure that at the end of the day, the leads get followed up, you get closings, and that you turn a positive return on investment with what y'all are doing?
My tried and true statistic that I run off of is conversion. Are they converting? If they're converting, I more than likely have an ROI. If they're converting and I don't, I have a bigger problem that I need to figure out, and that one falls on me. But conversion is what we base everybody off of, and conversion is what we hold them to. Harder than anything because industry standard for online leads conversion is actually terrible. So we had to push by that.
Welcome to Cash Call, the #1 real estate sales podcast, where we cover real sales skills in real time, as well as industry vendors, lead providers, CRMs, websites, and top producing teams and agents across North America, all so that you can improve your business in 30 minutes at a time. Cash Call, Dale Archdekin, Brian Curtis back for another week, and we have a treat for you today. I am forever indebted to the Robert Slack Real Estate group, Robert Slack Real Estate, for loaning us Lauren Bowen, who is their COO, which is amazing. And Lauren, it looks like you guys were founded in 2014. You've blown up. If you don't know who Robert Slack Real Estate is, go look them up. You can find them. They're #4 in the US and #1 in Florida. And Lauren herself is now the COO, and she oversees 17 team leaders in 5 different states. I'm getting a slight headache just saying that. On top of that, she manages and oversees 18 of the company's lead sources. So I don't know if you are AI generated or if you're a real human being, but Lauren, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. At this point, I'm not so sure if I'm AI generated or not. So you said it was starting to give you a headache. Trust me, I've had one for about 3 years now. So it is definitely a lot, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's fantastic. So just for the audience listening, give us some stats. Where was 2023 at? Unit, agents, unit count, et cetera, for Robert Slack Real Estate.
So 2023 was very different than we forecasted, than anyone forecasted, but we bared it well. So we ended up just shy of about 1.8 billion. We, for the first time, expanded our doors outside of Florida. So prior to 2023, we had only been in Florida. Last year, we actually expanded into Texas, Idaho, Colorado, and Georgia as well. So we ended the year about 4,300 transactions. So we were about 6% down from the previous year, which we were pretty happy with considering everything that was going on in the economy.
Wow, you said 1.8 billion, right?
Correct.
We're definitely pulling that out as a short, and with like a big 1.8 billion on it. That's fantastic. And so managing all of that has to be like I don't know what did it take for you to go from agent to then being the senior team leader to now the COO and like managing all of that. That had to, I don't know if you were already ready for that stuff or if it took a few jumps along the way for you to get there.
It took a few jumps. And it's, I guess, kind of 50-50. It took some jumps, but at the same time, it was kind of a natural progression. So I was one of the originals with this company, and this year will be our 10-year anniversary. And then a couple of years in, I did start becoming the senior team leader director. So I started overseeing the team leaders. So I've been doing that for quite some time. When Robert retired, Dan started wearing a few more hats, and it came a time where he needed some help with those hats. And at that time, we actually only had one lead source. So while I thought I was helping him managing the team leaders and working one lead source, that quickly evolved to 3 lead sources. And then last year, we ended the year with 18 different lead sources. So
Wow.
I thought I was taking a small jump. It ended up being a very big jump, but we found along the way, I don't want to brag. This sounds really bad, but I am good at it. I genuinely enjoy spreadsheets. I genuinely enjoy data. So working the lead sources was something that became a strength of mine.
Wow, that's really cool. So for those who don't know, what was the one you guys started with, and then what were the 3 you grew to? And then I'll have another question after that.
Sure. So if we go all the way back, we actually started our company on Zillow. We got away from Zillow and went to realtor.com about the time Zillow and bought Trulia. We ended up going to realtor.com. We do still to this day receive about 18 to 20,000 leads a month on realtor.com. So we still are their largest purchaser of leads.
Wow.
2 years ago, there was another lead source that we kind of expanded into called Roopler. We don't use them anymore. And it's one of those, sometimes some of the lead sources we continue, some of them we do not, just what works best for our company. So then it became realtor.com, Roopler, and then we went back to Zillow. So we kind of went full circle, and now it is expanded to 18 of them.
Okay, wow. Excellent. And so 18, that's crazy. So out of the 18, what would you say the top lead sources are now?
This is one of I don't know if it's my favorite question or the worst question, because favorite can be pretty subjective. Like, is it my favorite for conversion, my favorite ROI? What is my favorite? I
Okay.
like them all for different reasons.
So as the COO, here's what I want you to do. I want you to decide what makes a best lead source and then tell me which of those qualify as your top 3 or 4.
Top ROI and highest converting would be my two picks. Now, it's not
Nice.
that's not going to be the same for everybody, because at some point, like single agents or smaller teams have to decide what's going to be better for their pockets. To get started, what they start on now might not be the lead source they end up with in 3 years. So mine, because of where we are, is the top converting and the top ROI. And they are our two biggest players. So my favorites still to this day remain realtor.com and Zillow.
Okay. Got it. Great. Throw it. What's a third?
Third would have to be Veterans United. You don't hear it talked about a lot. I know we actually do work Redfin as well. We have a couple others in there like Rocket Mortgage. We do Ylopo. But those actually are Veterans United are actually very high converting for us as well.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Uh, and, you know, so from the lead source, right? Well, obviously, right now in a lot of different markets, there's low inventory. But markets are different all over the place. And so and you guys are working a lot of different markets, right? You're in 5 different states.
Right.
So if I ask you a generic question like, what are you seeing in the buyer and seller landscape? Is that a difficult answer because you're in 5 different states, or is it relatively homogenous?
It's a little difficult, and it also breaks down to the price point as well. So, like, let's say we go to Boise, for instance, up in Idaho, we still have a very hard time and have a lot of multiple offers going in that 250 to 450 range. While that happens in Florida, that's our toughest market right now. We still see multiple offers in Georgia, while we don't see them as much in Florida. So it is a little bit different depending what state they're in as well as what price point they're in. So, but we have trained our team leaders to be able to combat that and be able to train their agents on how to overcome it as well.
So how does that work? You have 17 team leaders. Does that mean you have 17 offices,
So we actually are pretty
essentially?
virtual. So I have 3 offices throughout the state of Florida. Everyone else does work virtual. So we were formed virtual before virtual was actually cool. So that's how we started, and that's how we've continued. So we do have 3 headquarters in Florida. I work out of our original office still to this day, but our corporate office is actually in Orlando, and we have one in South Florida as well. But everyone is pretty much virtual. Our team leaders are virtual, and our agents are as well. Now we do bring them in. Some teams do morning huddles where all the agents come in. We are going on what we call our tour of the states, where we actually go see everyone once a year in person. And so it's a little bit
And I'm
different.
going to be there. I'm
No,
coming to do some training for you
I was
guys.
excited about that as well. So you are
Me
so
too.
highly requested, and I mean our company absolutely loves you and the value you're able to
Thank you.
bring. So, but yeah, and that's part of it is we have to continue to bring the value. So while we might not see them as much in person, when we do, we know we have to be there to provide.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess then that means that pretty much, because the original question was going to be, what's your company doing to sort of deal with the market ups and downs or the lack of inventory or interest rate issues? But it sounds like really a lot of your team leaders who run teams or operate teams in various areas,
Mhm.
it sounds like they're a little more autonomous to understand what's going on in their current market and adapt and pivot to it, whatever that may be.
Correct. And as a company, I mean, we have to give them the tools to do that. So whether that's bringing in new technology, whether that's keeping them up to date on the market, whether that's keeping them up to date on interest rates and trends, that's what we do from a corporate side of it as well. So is there new ways we can start new ways we can leverage getting our offers more attractive? Is there more training that we can give them to kind of give their offer, while it might not be a huge difference, a little bit edge over the others? So corporate
Mhm.
level, we have to continue to bring it as well. We have to make sure we're continuously putting knowledge in front of them, because
Yeah.
it's not easy. And I mean, while they might know their market trends and while they might know what's going on in their area, we have to continue to know it from a broader standpoint as well. So tools,
Okay.
technology in this industry are ever evolving. And that's one of the things that we have to stay very in tune with, to see, can this actually make a 1% difference for our business?
Okay, great. Brian, why don't you take another couple of questions? I'm randomly hearing some kind of like barks or whatever from your background. Did you hear those noises?
You talking about me?
Yeah. I think it
There's
was like a
there's no barking.
no, not barking. There was some kind of weird like noise thing that was going on. I
I
don't know.
believe you.
I guess you didn't hear it. Yeah, if you watch the little bottom corner, like you see where my little bars are bouncing, you might see little bars bouncing on your window too.
I
Okay,
don't.
cool. All right.
So I'll leave that completely to y'all.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Brian, take a couple of questions. That way we can, we need to share because I'll just dominate the conversation.
It's a true story. Okay. Hey, Lauren. So, we appreciate you being here today, and I think it's great that we get to talk to somebody who's got a much bigger scope. The majority of people that I talk to are kind of like me. They run a small brokerage or a big team, and that's cool. But there's all kinds of other things that happen as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, as you know far better than I do. But really, my question is around, because I believe that the big teams are the ones who are going to survive as things change and grow, because they have resources, they have the ability to pivot. They can, not that they want to, but they can lose money for a short period of time. So, with all of that information, you've got 17 team leaders gathering information. Where do you see all the buyer agency and buyer compensation ending up? Because that's a big subject. I mean, I talked to a team yesterday. What do you guys want to talk about? We want to know about the lawsuits and what's going to happen and how to combat it. And so in essence, I guess I'm passing that very easy question on to you.
Oh, such an easy question. And funny you say that, because we actually had all our team leaders in this week, from all the states in our Orlando office, and that was one of the topics. They want to know, what are we going to do as a company for that? So Dan and I have been watching this, and Dan's our CEO, so I apologize. I mentioned him a couple times, but just and we watch it very carefully. Are there going to be changes? Undoubtedly. We're just still trying to navigate what those changes are going to be. In Florida, we primarily operate as transaction brokers. I do think that's going to go away. I do think we're going to probably have to transition a single agency, just like we can't have dual agency now. There is a way around it by being a transaction broker. I don't think you're going to see that way around it anymore. We did see some of the MLSs start transitioning to being able to allow zero compensation on, even though it's still shown there, it was able to be dropped from $1 down to zero. I do think that compensation field will probably be pulled off at some point. We are trying internally to get ahead of it. We think more than likely we're going to need BBAs. And we're kind of fortunate right now, because our expansion states, as we call them, already utilize BBAs. So they've been a big help for us, but Florida currently does not have to. So we've been trying to navigate what that looks like when we're trying to train 700 agents on a form that they're not familiar with. So internally, we're trying to gauge it. We have actually personally been kind of holding steady until we hear what the DOJ does give the final ruling on. We don't want to make any rash decisions. We don't want to make any preemptive decisions until we know exactly what's going to happen, because we don't want to train on potentially something that might not come to be. So internally, we're watching it, but I do think there's going to be changes. I think we're going to go to single agency. I don't think we're going to see compensation listed on the MLS anymore. But at the same time, one of the things we're trying to get ahead of now is actually something Dale was talking about with our company yesterday, is how to have that conversation. That is something we can start now. That is something we can train the agents on now, because that conversation is going to change. And I think buyers, agents have been vastly minimized in what they do. Like we have not done a good job at showing everything we have to do to get a transaction from contract to close, or even engagement to close. We're a leads generated brokerage. So how much work a buyer's agent has to do in comparison to a listing agent has never really been expressed in the best way. So now we're really going to have to show our value to be able to get that compensation. So those conversations are something we are starting now. How to have that conversation, how to overcome those objections are something we're doing as a company now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had access to a study, and that study said the average buyer's agent works about 80 hours on one transaction. And that's all. Now, if you're putting a transaction coordinator, there are attorneys in there, they're kind of looping that all together. But here's the point of contrast I thought was interesting is the agent thinks, the math is the agent works about 80 hours, but the public thinks we work about 15. And so is the big challenge that, well, man, you're making, $3,000 an hour. Well, no, I'm making $300 an hour. Not that's a bad living. But my point is that, yeah, I love that you're talking about transparency because I believe that's where we've got to go. We have to show our value. If all they think we do is pop a lock and drink beer, then they're probably not going to want to pay us. We have to show them that it's important to them to value that. And I'm glad to hear you guys are starting to work on it. I think it's vital. I think so many people are going to get left behind by just going, oh crap, I can't do this anymore. I guess I quit. I really believe that. So I think it's going to be an interesting 24 months.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think it's crazy that, within our industry, we've always known, generally speaking, per transaction, a buyer's agent works harder or more than a listing agent.
By far.
Yep. Brian, you see the thing popping right there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the feedback coming from your speakers.
Okay.
Because you're not actually talking.
So
let's see if that works.
I don't know how to fix it. I mean,
okay. I'm just pointing it out to you. That's what I was hearing earlier. Where was I at?
It wasn't a dog. It was just you.
It wasn't. It was me. I was barking in Brian's house.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's just known that generally speaking, per transaction, a buyer's agent does a lot more work than a listing agent. It's just kind of the fact, right? Once you've listed a property, it tends to be a lot on the agents, or if an agent's running a buyer around, they do a lot of work. But that's never really been articulated to the general public. And so I think, as you guys were saying, that's definitely something that we've got to do moving forward. Brian, what's our next question?
Sure. So, Lauren, tell us a little bit about software. I'm kind of a tech guy. I like the nerdy tech stuff. Dale and I don't always share that part of it. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. But, what's some core software that you're using? Because, a lot of agents start out and they think maybe they want to be as big as the Robert Stack real estate. I don't know. Maybe they don't. But I'm a big fan of begin with the end in mind. So don't buy a cheap $50 CRM or a cheap piece of software. What kind of software you guys use? And maybe our audience can take a look at some of that.
Absolutely. And you're correct on that. Don't go into this with a cheap CRM. And I want to preface, when we started, we never in 100 years thought we would be where we are today. So we were very happy at 4 and 6 agents, and we were even happier at 20. And then how we grew to this size is just kind of still a little unbelievable to us. So, but again, not taking the cheap route. And we couldn't do that without our CRM. So we do utilize Follow-Up Boss, and it is still remains to be hands down the best CRM out there. So everything we're able to do within it, really keeps us afloat. And I don't say that lightly. Our Florida database has 1.4 million leads in it that we've accumulated over the 10 years. So having a CRM that can handle that while still continuing to pair with tech tools that are out there has been huge for us. And when we have a database that size, we are using quite a bit of technology to keep them engaged and make sure we have them engaged. But even having a CRM that can run that many action plans at one time has been huge. But and a couple others that we do utilize Ylopo. We also utilize Real Scout and then Fellow as well. And a big part of what we've been doing over the past 12 months is making sure our database doesn't get lost in the noise, making sure we're still able to continuously close out of our database. Our goal continues to be to close as many out of our database as it is closing amongst new leads. So otherwise, we aren't doing ourselves justice of what we've been able to accumulate over these years.
So we heard Follow-Up Boss, Ylopo, Real Scout, Fellow. Mm-hmm. Are there any plugins, because we know that Follow-Up Boss definitely is one of the best platforms for API integration, has tons of integrations with various apps. What are some of the core apps that you guys have plugged into Follow-Up Boss?
So we have all of those plugged in, and a couple of the others that we utilize. We do have a licensed ISA team, and they actually run call action through it as well. And then another one that's a little less known is Osiris, and we actually do genuinely. What did I?
It's Brian.
I'm Jeff's business partner.
Are you really? I did not
Yeah.
know that. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, I guess it's a good thing I said that. Just to give you a heads up that you will.
Shout out.
There's going to be a webinar with one of the lead sources I mentioned earlier on, and they asked me our favorite tech tool. So
Hey.
you probably edit this out, but the Zillow One Flex quarterly summit comes out at the end of the month, and they asked my favorite tech tool, and it was Osiris that I mentioned.
Wow, look at that. We won't edit that out. Let's leave it in there. We'll put a little frame. We'll put a blue ribbon on Brian.
I did not know that. Actually, we were meeting with Jeff on Monday, so I did not know that. But I feel like it's very underutilized still. So we have a massive database. And were we letting stuff fall through the cracks? Absolutely. And I don't think we realized how many were falling through the cracks until we implemented Osiris and put our ISAs on it. And then we were like, oh boy, let's try and clean this up. So I have 2 teams that are dedicated around this just to see all of everything that's bubbling up that it's able to find for us that we were missing.
Lauren, I've worked with teams that have 200,000, 300,000, leads in their system, and there's absolutely huge inefficiencies and lots of stuff missing. I can't even imagine the extent of 1.4 million leads. That's not falling through the cracks. That's like, hey, our basement is full because of all the stuff that went through the floorboards.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was it. I mean, no matter how good we thought we were doing, we weren't. But that was something that really made a big difference in how we worked our database. So, I mean, being able to see that, we had to form teams around that. We had to build teams around those Slack channels just to be able to catch everything that was coming up.
That's crazy. Well, let's see. What do we got on the list over here? Senior. Oh, I had to talk about. I thought you were the senior team leader director. Yeah, I guess we could move to that. So, you as the chief operating officer for this massive empire. So how in the world do you keep all the planes in the air without them crashing into each other?
With a lack of sleep. No, but really just with being able to be intentional with my days has been a big key factor of it. Like we were talking about earlier, it was never thought that I would be overseeing the team leaders and 18 lead sources. We thought it'd be the team leaders and a lead source, maybe 2 lead sources. And then we evolved and realized they kind of went hand in hand. My teams are leads driven. So it kind of made sense for me to stay in front of the leads that I managed and the team leaders to make sure that they were converting them, that we saw positive ROI, that they were delivering. Did we have under delivery in some areas? So it made sense for me to continue doing both, but I had to become very intentional in what my days looked like, which wasn't always the case. Sometimes I could come in, pick up where I left off, work on something else. I had to really start scheduling where I needed to be that day and really start blocking it out, or else stuff was on my end going to start falling through the cracks because I started needing to run multiple reports. I really do like spreadsheets more than the normal human being. It's a little problem, but they bring me happiness. So
that's why she loves Osiris.
That is exactly. But I had to become intentional with them because if I didn't, my reporting would start falling behind. If my reporting falls behind, then I start to lose my team doing.
Yeah. So with that in mind, because you're a numbers person, clearly spreadsheets, things of that sort. How are you using that data or other data to hold your organization accountable? Accountability is such a big problem. Heck, I run a team that has 20 people and we occasionally have accountability issues. I mean, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. How do you go about that to make sure that at the end of the day, the leads get followed up, you get closings, and that you turn a positive return on investment with what y'all are doing?
My tried and true statistic that I run off of is conversion. Are they converting? If they're converting, I more than likely have an ROI. If they're converting and I don't, I have a bigger problem that I need to figure out, and that one falls on me. But conversion is what we base everybody off of, and conversion is what we hold them to harder than anything because industry standard for online leads conversion is actually terrible. So we had to push by that. Industry standard was not something I was ever going to be happy with. So we had to take industry standard 1%ers and push them to 6%, which we got to. Industry standard conversions of 5%, we had to take them to 10%. And it was just continuously holding them accountable. And you're right, we actually don't do a great job of holding our agents accountable. It sounds bad, but we're a little too nice with it sometimes. But when you're a leads driven brokerage, we're the ones bearing all the expense to give them these opportunities. When I'm providing them 20 to 30 opportunities a month, this is a huge expense that I'm willing to incur because I believe in them. But me believing them also brings forward a lot of accountability that I have to do on my end to make sure that they're going to convert. So accountability has always been true, very something we hold them very accountable to, but my team leaders also are held accountable. So just because they hold their agents, I have to hold them. If their teams start falling backwards, we do actually have like warning systems in place. We don't actually utilize them very often, which I think they're very thankful for, but that's huge. And I don't think, again, it's another part of our industry we're not very good with at articulating. And part of that we try and internalize here is setting the expectation up front. I can't hold them accountable if I've never really set the expectation up front for them. How do I hold them accountable if I never told them what the expectation was? So before they start leads within our brokerage, and at the beginning of the year, we have an expectation sheet that everyone signs, knowing what their minimum conversion needs to be, what minimum calls need to be, what minimum text messages need to be across all sources. They don't have to do it. I mean, let's not forget they're not my employees, but if they want leads, they have to. I mean, I can't force them to. If you don't, that's fine. You're just not getting any more opportunities. You're going to have to start finding them on your own.
I love that.
I love that you said that, Lauren. And here's why I love that. This is what I hear team leaders say all the time. I can't make a meeting mandatory. Yes, you can. You make it. If you don't come to my meeting, you don't get X. Well, I can't tell them what to do. Yes, you can. And if you're you're right. If you're just a regular brokerage where you hang a license on a wall, I guess your only ability is to fire somebody. But as team leaders, and especially in your situation here, we got plenty of leverage. And so team leaders watching this, don't let the tail wag the dog, I guess. Don't let the inmates run the asylum. Absolutely. Lauren's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. What she does with them holds them accountable, and that's awesome.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I love it. I'm going to grab that soundbite, Lauren, because both Brian and I coach team leaders and brokers and a lot of different clients. And that's a core thing that comes up a lot is around accountability. Mm-hmm. And so tied in with that, I have a question for you. So if you could, what would you say are between your best performing team leaders and your not best performing team leaders, I'll just be generous. What would you say, what are some qualities about a team leader that makes them more successful than others? Do you have a couple of qualities that you notice?
Adaptability. And I think that's a big one that people might underestimate a little bit, because sometimes your top agent may not do it anywhere near what your number 2 agent does. I mean, do we have standards that we expect everyone to uphold to convert? Yes. But there are instances where one person may do it vastly different than the other, how they get across the finish line. And I think you have to be able to have an open mind to be able to see that, just to be able to learn from them. Like, you have to have a little bit of open-mindedness to say, just because A does it this way doesn't mean B needs to do it this way. You have to be able to kind of take a step back and look, like, do I need to push them to do it this way, even though they're successful this way? Like, you have to have a little bit of adaptation with that. Like, all right, let's give them a little bit of leeway. Now, mind you, if they're not converting and they're your bottom 20%, don't give them that leeway. They don't deserve the leeway at that point. They need to be doing it like person A, but empathy as well. It's not an easy business that we're in. It's been very hard in the past to make real estate a full-time job. So, which is why our leads model came about a few years ago. I actually came from the medical field, so this was not my original career. So being able to take a step into this and having opportunities every day, was a little bit different, but having that empathy to realize people may just be starting their journey, being able to, things could be tight, but being able to understand it from more than just a statistical number. So there's a few different qualities that I think make a good team leader, because it's not always about numbers. It's not always about what's going on, but at the same time, you have to be able to kind of bend and flow with it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and we'll let you we've taken up a ton of your time and we really appreciate you having here. One more question for you. What advice would you give to a small or medium team that wants to be a mega team rock star like your company? What advice would you give them?
Go for it. First of all, don't feel like you can't. Like I said, I did not think we'd ever be in this position, and don't be afraid to follow that dream. But also, as you continue growing, always take a step back, whether it's the beginning of every year, every 6 months, take a step back and look at your core processes to make sure you're not losing sight of them along the way. Because as you grow, people can tend to get sloppy internally, and that's something we've really combated. Our first expansion was probably more sloppy than I care to admit, but we learned a lot from it. And as we continue to grow, we went back to the beginning each time to make sure that we had our processes in place and fine tune them a little bit more. But when you grow, make sure you're always taking that step back to make sure your process is there and you're not losing sight of anything that you did when you were a smaller company or a smaller brokerage or a smaller team. If you're able to take that step forward, you've been successful. You have done things that have made you successful. Don't lose sight of those. Don't lose sight of who you are as a team and company, and try and keep what makes you different at the forefront of it. There are some great teams and great companies out there that we're very fortunate to be friends with that are very different than how we are, but they're different, but it's kept them growing as well. And they kept who they are at the forefront of it. So one, don't be scared of it. Two, just keep in mind, you have to continuously go back and inspect just to make sure you're doing it justice.
Excellent. What are you guys excited for 24?
All of it. No, I'm excited for normalcy to return. I hope that it is going to happen, but I'm excited for normalcy to return to this market. I thought we would see it a little bit sooner than this, but I think we will start seeing a normal market reappearing and people to have a little bit more confidence in where we are and not expecting interest rates to go back down to the twos and finally be able to put that behind them and realizing that's not going to happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lauren.
Absolutely.
What's up, Brian?
Isn't that the conversation we seem to spend all of our time on? About is the interest rates are not going to go back down under 3. We have to accept this reality. It's just, and the reason I'm even saying that right here is even Robert Slack Real Estate is dealing with the same thing. So whether you're a team leader or a single agent watching this, the fourth largest, most successful team in the country is having the same struggles that you are. And I think that's an important thing for understanding. I would say the difference is that Lauren has a plan. And if you don't have a plan, that's what's going to bite those people. So find somebody to make a plan, I guess, is really my point there.
Excellent. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today. It's definitely been an honor to have you on with us. And anytime that we can have you back, we'll hopefully get your attention again. No, that sucks.
Thank you.
Lauren, thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us today. It's been an honor getting a chance to meet you and talk to you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thanks, Lauren.
Bye.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Cash Call today. If you like what you heard, come check us out at smartsalescoaching.com, and we'll be back again next week.